Welcome to the driveway garden. Today I'm going to do something special, something a little bit different. I'm going to be doing a video that is a response to Kadie at Rain or Shine Gardening. She's in my area and you can find her channel on YouTube. I think she's also on Instagram and other places. And Kadie put out a wonderful video that went around her garden, introducing you more to her garden and really trying to get into some more of the details of the garden as a model for kind of how we could be doing more of that kind of content. And so then what she did that was really cool is she tagged several garden creators and really asked the whole garden creator community that might be interested to do similar videos. And she gave us a list of prompts that we could follow to kind of do a similar video. And you know, for a gardener that is often looking for what should my next video be about, it's such a gift to have somebody provide that. So thank you, Kadie, and I am happy to be sharing the things that you've prompted for. I'm gonna whip out my list. So my name, I am Ty, and I am gardening here in the Pacific Northwest, specifically in Portland, Oregon. My channel name, if you're here, you probably know, but this is The Driveway Garden. And my USDA hardiness zone, well, that one is kind of a loaded question. So historically here in the Portland area, we have been zone 8B, but a few years ago, it was officially changed, I believe it was a few years ago, it was changed to zone 9A. When I'm doing videos or I reference the zone I'm in, I still use zone 8B in that reference because I think more people think of us as 8B, and so I want people to be able to find what I'm talking about or relate to what I'm talking about based on their historical belief or their knowledge of what the zone is. But the truth is the zone actually was changed, I believe, to 9A. And the other reality to this is that in our area, there's a ton of microclimates. So it's not really the case that everywhere in our area is zone 8B or everywhere in our area is 9A. It still depends exactly where you're at in our area, and it may depend on the year. Some years may be more like 8B and some years may be more like 9A. So I'd say we're more in a transitionary phase when it comes to the USDA zones. Gardening style, started out growing vegetables, and so I did a lot of veggie growing, but as many of you gardeners probably relate to, you get to a point where there's only so many veggies you can grow. Your family's not going to eat everything, the glut that comes in all at once of certain crops. And even though I like to donate them, you just get to the point where you want to grow other things. So years ago, I got into trying to grow all kinds of different flowers too. So look around my garden. I'm kind of a weird mix between a cottage garden and maybe sometimes I'd say right now it has more of the cottage garden feel where I just mix and match everything all the way around. I've been more formal at some times and survivalist at some times. So I think that's goes. I remember there was a funny cartoon years ago where they were categorizing different gardeners, and I had a friend who said, you know, I think Ty is the combination of the survivalist, hippie, traditional English gardener. He's a weird hybrid between all of those, and I think that sums it up in terms of my style. In terms of how long, I mentioned about 18 years. I actually started here at this property gardening and my residence where I live, and about 18 years ago. And I grew up, my dad gardened. He didn't really garden flowers, he gardened vegetables, and he didn't do it in a particularly highly organized way. Gardening style is way different than my dad's for sure. He would just, you know, go out and he had beds and stuff. He'd have raised beds often, but he'd go out and he'd just plant lots of stuff in those beds and never seemed to have a massive amount of organization to it, which is definitely against my personality. but I never got into it. You know, when gardening with Dad, when I was a kid and a teenager was a chore. So maybe you have to go out and water the garden for him, or you may have to go pull some weeds, you may have to go harvest some things. And it was something I never took any interest in. I was in my mid-30s before I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting, and now it's mine and something that I want to do, and I want to do it at my house and my property. I started my gardening journey here at this property, but it looked nothing like this at that time. At that time, there were no terraced walls on the sides of the driveway. The sides of the driveway were nothing but bare dirt that basically were hillside dirt that went up because we're in a very hilly area of the Portland metro area here, with lots of lots of hills and valleys and things. And my house is basically like situated in between a couple of hills. I just had a couple of hills on both sides, and they had been landscaped. The house had some with some just very basic kind of shrubs and low maintenance landscaping. So, you know, bark mulch and a lot of kind of like fairly uninteresting shrubs everywhere. So I got into gardening, and I started by a little vegetable plot over on the house and learned that that wasn't the place to be putting a vegetable plot because there wasn't enough sun there. Built a really fancy box there. I moved on. I realized, okay, well, out here is where the sun is, so I want to garden out in these areas. And so I ripped out all the landscaping that was designed to keep all of this low around the driveway, all low maintenance, and I started gardening. But I had lots of challenges with the hillside, but I just kind of worked around them. And I would have lots of for the first, you know, I did that for a few years, and I would end up with like the driveway would always be covered with debris piles or, you know, various things or whatever. And I was leaving quite a mess out on the driveway all the time. We had concluded that it would make sense to maybe garden somewhere else. And so we found a half-acre property with a 1940s farmhouse, and the farmhouse could be used as a rental, which we did for a little while up until the pandemic, and then we stopped doing that during the pandemic, and we ended up using the house as kind of just a second property for a while. And it's kind of a funny second property to have because it's very close to our residence. So we weren't going off away somewhere out of the community. It's still in the community, but it was a place for me to garden. It was perfect, nice and flat. And like I said, it was a half-acre. I was able to build a greenhouse there. I built a nice potting bench there. It was the first time I'd built a potting bench, so it gave me the skills that let me build the one that I'll show you here. And property already had a potting shed, a fun little potting shed, and it had a storage shed for tools. And then the basement of that property actually would stay rather warm throughout the winter, so it was a great place to set up the lights and the racks for seed starting. So I had a nice big basement, unfinished basement area for seed starting. I had the greenhouse for kind of a secondary place for it to come up, and a nice space in the garden. I had the potting shed, I had the potting bench. It was perfect. I mean, everything you could want in an urban garden setting had available there. And what I was really enjoying at that property was getting into producing as much veg and flowers as I could, that I could actually take it down and donate it. So that became a weekly activity, and it was a great way for me to kind of keep track of the progress of the garden, because when I would donate it, they would weigh it and tell me, oh, you donated 20 pounds this week, or you donated 25, or then 30 pounds a week. And so it was a really cool thing to be able to do during the season, and it's an activity I really enjoyed. And what I learned from that process was just the packaging up of everything takes a lot of time and effort, as much time and effort actually, in my view, as growing it, really. But that's kind of a side note. The main point was that was my life. Between my day job and doing that, got up every hour that I had, and it was a full life, and I enjoyed it. And then after 20 years of marriage, my wife and I decided that before it was too late, we actually did want to try and have our own child. And so Maddie was born 3 years ago, and it was about 3 months after she was born that I realized I couldn't keep up with that level of gardening for that large of a space and that activity, and also do my day job, and also raise a child that we intentionally brought into this world. It was our new thing. It's what we wanted to do with our lives at this point as we go into this later part of our life. It was obvious and easy at that point to say, hey, we need to shut this garden down because there's just not enough time for me to be doing this anymore. So we did that. I shut that garden down with the intent on selling that property. And I'd say year one after Maddie was born, back here at the house, and just kind of wandered around, did other things. And I mean, your first year of having a baby when you've never had a baby before is a lot. So that was enough to keep me busy. And so I didn't do any gardening really that first year. And then by year two, started doing a little bit of piddling around, doing a little bit of things here and there, maybe getting ready. Started to have the thoughts in my head that maybe I was gonna get back to it, and I could actually maybe do it here at this property. And then we rolled into year three, and the beginning of 2026, I said, you know what? I'm gonna go for it. It's not the same. It's not a big flat half-acre lot that you know makes it easy, but the challenge is where the fun is. And so the idea of the driveway garden was born, and started kind of getting the retaining wall process in place and to create more room and getting all the containers rounded up. And and as you can see, I've gone for it here. And so seeing what I can do to maximize the driveway garden here at this location, and see if I can get back to growing enough that I can get back to what I loved about the gardening before, in terms of being able to share it with others and share what we could produce here with others. And we haven't achieved that yet, but I am still hopeful that as I work on the infrastructure here that allows me to grow more, that I will achieve that. So that's been my gardening journey, and it's much different. If you look in prior videos, you'll see I started this YouTube channel as PDX Garden Home back before Maddie was born, and I was having fun with it back then, and it was just a different mission and a different gardening. And today we're now in a much different place with a much different challenge, but it's fun. A lot of the same elements of gardening are still fun, and I'm still enjoying it. And I'm glad that you're here with me, and I hope that you keep joining me in the journey as we carry on through this. So I am going to take us around the garden, and I'm going to respond to the prompts that Kadie has given us so graciously as a way to describe and share with you what I'm doing here. So let's go. So following along on Kadie's prompts, she asks, show us your favorite place in the garden and explain why that's your favorite. I would say this is probably for most of the year my favorite place. This is the potting bench, and if you watch my videos, you see a lot of the videos filmed here, and that's because I do a lot of seed starting. So most everything that I plant in the garden comes from seeds that I plant myself, including perennials. I mean, there's certain things I don't. A lot of like fruit trees and stuff I don't plant from seed myself, but it's about everything else. I don't get start plants generally from the nurseries. Occasionally I do for fun, something that maybe I didn't grow or as a backup to something I didn't grow, but almost everything is started from seed or bulbs or whatever. And that is now happening here. I built this last winter, was my infrastructure over the winter last year. Usually I plan on doing garden infrastructure projects over the winter part of the year when not as much stuff is growing and the rest of the garden would slow down for me. And so my project should have been my retaining wall project, which you may have been following along with me, but it ended up being finishing off this potting bench, and I'm enjoying it. It was the right choice to do it because it's been very useful this year. I enjoy it. And right here I made what I call the Maddie bench. So she's got her potting bench right next to me here, and there's like a little sandbox in there that she can play with. And yeah, it's been fun. I've really enjoyed it. She's at an age right now though where when I'm out in the garden, that's when she seems to want to be at the potting bench. And when I'm at the potting bench, that's when she seems to want to be out in the garden. So trying to align, hey, I happen to be planting something right here, why don't you play at the potting bench? We haven't quite made that work the way I had hoped, but that was the dream, that we could be doing our things together in that way. So anyway, yeah, I really love this area, but actually the area that I love often would depend on the time of year and how hot it is. This area stays cooler on this side of the house, and what's over here. Definitely in the summer, it's a nice place to hang out as well. And certainly in the winter, it's got a cover, so I'm getting less rained on and it can be nice to hang out. But there are times of the year where maybe there are other parts of the garden that might be my favorites. But if I'm measuring the whole year, I would say this ends up being the place that I enjoy the most. Well, one of Kadie's prompts was, what is your peaceful area to kind of sit and hang out and watch your garden? And right now, this is definitely subject to change as I finish my construction projects around the garden. But back here, this is what I tell my 3-year-old is the construction zone. So she's not allowed to come over here because we're in the construction zone, because I'm still working on this retaining wall over here. And I'm gonna put another retaining wall here, and I've got a lot of digging and stuff going on back here, right? But it's like in the middle of everything. It's like, you know, this plastic seat just sitting here during the day, you know, if the sun's not blaring down on me. So certain times of the day, it's not great, but particularly like, you know, in the evening, the sun is setting over on the west side, you know, behind the fence line, behind the hills. This becomes cooler and nice, and it's a nice, you know, I can see a lot of the garden from here, and I can be in the garden from here, and it can be lovely. It's a nice place to, sometimes when I just want a break as I'm walking around the garden, I might just come sit down here and relax and sit and think, and it gets me away. Because we have some nice seating on the deck of the back of the house there, but the problem with that is that then you're then you're in it. That seating opens from the living room, and that's where Maddie's primary hangout is. And so you're in it, you're with the family, and of course I love being with the family, but there are times when you just want that piece of kind of thinking to yourself. And I have my office in the garage where I can hide away, but this is out in nature, kind of. It's a driveway garden, so as much as nature as you might call it, but it's out with the plants and some fresh air, and like I said, it's peaceful. So this is my peaceful area. Well, one of Kadie's prompts was, what is the biggest challenge in your garden? And for the driveway garden, you probably can guess what my biggest challenge is. It's space, having enough space to do all the gardening that I want to do. You saw my potting bench. I can grow a lot of seedlings. You know, if you've looked at some of the prior videos that I've had, you'll see my racks in the garage for growing seedlings. So I've got a lot of capacity to grow a lot of seedlings, way more than I can actually plant out here and have room for. And I love growing seedlings. So that is the part that I find most challenging, is that I have all these seedlings I want to grow, but I really don't have enough space for them. Now, I think I've been pretty good about it this year in terms of keeping myself conservative and cutting back on how much I'd grow there. You know, for example, with my ceiling, I use less than half of my infrastructure. I had racks with lights that were just totally unused for the whole season, just because I knew I couldn't grow. I knew I would have nowhere to put the seedlings if I went all out using the total capacity that I had to grow seedlings. So one of the things I'm hoping to do is network with other gardeners and be able to provide them with seedlings. Why not? You know, and because it's not that much effort for me if I'm planting, for example, if I'm planting some asters or petunias or pansies or whatever, you know, at the seedling stage, planting, 6 to 12 of those for myself, I may as well plant a whole tray and then give the rest of them away. It's not a whole lot of extra effort at that time to do that. So I'm looking forward to seeing what I can do with that. But that's getting beyond what Kadie actually asked, which is, what's the challenge? It's space, of course. So one of Kadie's prompts was, what is the star of the garden, or what plant am I most proud of? And I'd say right now, we're in mid to late August. I would say the zinnias just turned out better over here than I had thought of. I mean, I had confidence they would come out in some fashion, but just lining up a row here of pots with zinnias along this walkway and having them come out was, yeah, it just takes my breath walking through here every time I do it. I love it. And so that, I would say, is the star of the show for now. I wanted to start with the zinnias because I think that sometimes, because I don't cut the flowers and make bouquets on a regular basis or anything like that, but I do harvest vegetables, my channel gets dominated by the veggie side of it, because that's something that I'm constantly doing. And I do have a star of the veggie world, but I wanted to start with the flowers here. But if we kind of rotate over here to what I call the cherry tree garden, and we come over here to the veggie world, I do have a star, and it's the thing that is working out that I was skeptical of whether it would work out. And some of you may have already seen, I've done videos on this, long form, short videos, all of it, but the pumpkin. I'm growing a pumpkin in this driveway garden, and I'm growing it in a vine that is going up this trellis that I created around the cherry tree here. So I'm growing a pumpkin up a cherry tree. so I'm enjoying that. And while we're here, let me show you, because there's some other fun things, because I'm growing pumpkins and winter squashes. I basically am trellising them up and around this cherry tree. I want to show you this because I just think it's so fun. There's that's our Halloween pumpkin. That hopefully will be Maddie's Halloween pumpkin. You can see next to it, there's a delicata squash there. But as I come up the cherry tree here, and we go, you'll see the winter squash vines wrapping around. And hey, hanging out in the cherry tree, what do we got there? A butternut squash. That's right. And come around this side, and you can just see kind of how the vines just keep wrapping around everything. And by the way, putting some sticks up against the cherry tree there, some branches, and then putting the pumpkins and the beans and let them grow them up there. That was a design idea to basically create a little teepee, a little area behind that we call the Maddie fort. So she's got a bucket to sit on back there, and that's her little fort. She plays like she's got imaginary doors and windows to that thing. So one of the things Kadie asked about was, do you have a nonstop bloomer in the garden? And this time of year, there's a lot of things that may feel like it. They took a while to get going. So for example, marigolds are just nonstop blooming for me, but they did take a while to get going. I really didn't get them going until like July-ish. And so, you know, if I really putting my head into it, the thing that's truly been a nonstop bloomer beginning to end of the garden season are these Strawflowers, which I didn't even plant this year. These were overwintered from last year. And I keep saying that. I actually haven't looked this up. I'm not sure that it's really the same plants that were overwintered, or if there's just so much seed that comes off this that seedlings came up and grew. But I have several stands of these things towering in the garden here. And these red and yellow Strawflowers, they were out in the beginning of spring, and they have been carrying out this entire season, and they just keep going and going. Don't get around to even remembering to deadhead all of them that often. I try to, but they go regardless. So that's been the non-stop blooming in the garden this year. Well, Kadie asked about something that makes this garden unique, and it's not super unique. Other people do this or have this, but we have 1, 2, 3, we've got 4 Espaliered and then a fig tree, 4 Espaliered apple trees and then a fig tree that go along here. And so you can't see it right here because of the grapevines, but this path here, it's concrete, right? There's stairs there and then this concrete path that goes along the east side and stairs there. And on both ends where the stairs are, there are very sturdy, you know, black metal railings to, you know, for safety and to help people up or whatever. But there was no railing or fence between that and the other end down there. So there was nothing but open hillside. And so in my first round of gardening here, you know, 18 years ago, one of the very first things I did before doing any other gardening out here was I planted these apple trees, and I had this vision of this espalier fence essentially that runs along the pathway. And I certainly did not invent the style, but keep these trimmed here. And this year, if you follow some of my videos, you know we had challenges of, we really didn't have any apples. We had 1 apple, and the other day Maddie was walking down the garden path with an apple in her mouth, and I was like, I took a double take, and I'm like, did you pick the 1 apple that we have? And sure enough, she had decided it was time and she was gonna eat that apple. So she was, my 3-year-old had decided that the apple was hers to eat, and she did. And I got a bite of it. It was good. But the year before, last year, you know, and some years we have a big glut of apples. So something weird happened here last year. But if you're afraid trimming it this way would prevent you from having apples, that's not my experience. I do get apples doing this quite a bit, and it keeps them where I can reach them, which is nice. And so, yeah, it's a nice kind of living fence, and the trees are very robust, and they've done well here for, gosh, probably 18 years now. It's amazing, kind of thinking back that it's actually been that long. Well, Kadie asks, is there something we accomplished this year in the garden that we're particularly proud of? I wish I could say it was the retaining wall project. I would say I'm proud of sections of it. I got like the first tier done, and so I was proud when I did that, but it's still in process. So I'm gonna save that for a later video to raise that flag and say that I'm proud of that. The thing that got done for this season was the potting bench. So I am pretty proud of how that turned out here on the side of the house. It's a great resource, and it really fuels the rest of the garden because I'm starting all the seedlings here. I'm storing a lot of my tools and everything here. So this becomes the command center that really makes the driveway garden otherwise work. And so I'm pretty proud of what I was able to do and just building that out. Probably one of the reasons I'm proud of that is I've never been a particularly handy guy. So I'm not the kind of guy that have a lot of carpentry or construction in my background, other than doing projects like this over time in the garden. Well, Kadie asks, what's next? What's next for the garden? And I would say What's next is actually the same thing I've been working on all year here. The next thing for this garden is to finish this retaining wall project. So you can see I kind of got it roughed in here. I'm almost done. I just gotta kind of finish out this tier here. There was another tier here that's covered up by all my plants right now. So that's one tier, second tier here, and then I've got to do the third tier here. So that's probably going to take me the rest of this year, the way things are going. So that is what's next, and cross your fingers for me, because hopefully that means coming into next season, this is done, and I've got more space for growing. Kadie asks for wisdom that we get from our gardens, and I think that the wisdom I get is kind of the same thing that suits me about gardening, is that things take time, and the best things take some patience, and that they don't happen overnight, and you have to, I like the work, the long, steady work that takes place over a period of time and then results in something that you can be proud of or that you want to share. And that's a big part of what gardening is to me. It's a lot of things to me, but that is one of the big things that it is to me, is that long-term commitment to working out something and then having something you can then share with others once you've done that. Yeah. I don't know if I can say any more than that. I think that is the thing, the wisdom I would leave you with. Thanks to Kadie at Rain or Shine Gardening for inspiring this, and thank you all to sitting through it, and see you all in the next one.